All right, class, in this last video segment, I'm going to give you a personal example of my own personal strategy that I used creating this very same process that you're going to use in this How Will You Measure Your Life project. So just, first of all, just a quick reminder. Here's the assignment. You should have by now read the Harvard Business Review article, How Will You Measure Your Life? You should have watched the Trombone Player Wanted video series. You should have You'll be, if you haven't already, you'll be discovering and documenting your personal values. You'll write a purpose statement. You're going to define your mission for the next 5 to 10 years, and keep in mind it needs to be quantifiable. You're going to perform a personal SWOT analysis. That is, what is your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Then based on your personal vision and your SWOT analysis, you're going to develop a life strategy. Then finally, you'll decide and document how you'll measure your progress. And check your syllabus for the due date on this, and make sure that you upload that to Brightspace by the date on your syllabus. Now, I thought it might be helpful for you to see a very quick personal example of my own plan. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into all the details, but I thought this might give you a jump start on your assignment. So you can see my personal values listed on the left. Your values will very likely be different. They should be. Your values should reflect what's important to you, not what's important to me. My personal values are integrity. I tend to be a very results-oriented person. I always try to treat people with respect, even with people that completely disagree with me. I want to respect their point of view and treat them with respect. I try to have a high say-do ratio. That is, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I do it. I never want to be apologizing for telling somebody I would do something and then not doing it. And then my last value is a little bit interesting, I think. It's serenity. And I refer to that particular type of value as an aspirational value, in that I want to be somebody who brings calm to a situation, who brings order and not chaos. But I know that because I'm results-oriented, I'm very driven, and I'm all about results, that sometimes I can get wound pretty tight. And so I list serenity as a value because it's something I strive for. Like I say here, I want to bring light before heat. Because I find that when I can keep this mindset, I make better decisions, and I make the people around me better. So people that know me would say, Tobe, you're not always real serene. And I would say, absolutely, but that's something I'm striving for. It's important to me, and it makes me a better person. Now, moving on to purpose. Again, our purpose is something that should last a lifetime, and may not make sense to other people, but it should motivate you and make sense to you. Let me explain my purpose. My purpose is results, not reports. For most of my life, I've been in jobs that required me to write lots of reports, and that's okay, that's good. When I was in public accounting, I had to prepare financial statements and write audit reports, that type of thing. When I was a CFO, I had to write reports and financial analysis. Even as a researcher now, I engage in research and write research papers. And that's all good. Those are important. But the most important thing to me are not those reports, it's the results that come from those reports. It's the better decisions those organizations made based on the financial information I provided. It's the better decisions and the more effective managers we can be by understanding the research that I engage in. I'm all about results, not generating more paper. Now, a few years ago when I went through this process, I came up with the mission that it was my mission to teach management students at the college level by January 2016. Well, I actually was able to do that a couple years before that. In 2014, I started teaching management to college students. Now, when you've accomplished a mission, even if it's before the due date, you have to come up with a new one. So I did. I wrote a new mission. Well, my next goal, my next BHAG was to become a full-time professor at a research university by August 2018. I actually became a full-time professor at Oklahoma State University in August 2016. So I achieved that goal ahead of time. But because I accomplished that mission, I needed to write a new mission. Okay, what's the next thing I'm striving for? Well, my next mission that I'm working on now is to have my research published in a peer-reviewed journal by December 2018, and I'm getting close. I've got 2 different research projects that I've worked on, that I've written up research papers on, that I'm going to be submitting to conferences and to peer-reviewed journals. So again, the thing you notice about this mission is I should be able to measure this pretty clearly. It's got a specific due date, December 2018, and it'll either be published in a peer-reviewed journal by that date or it won't. So that's an example there. When I did my own analysis of my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you may have figured this out from listening to me talk, but I tend to be very goal-oriented, very focused on results. As a researcher, as someone who worked in the financial world and accounting for many years, I tend to make decisions based on facts, based on the data. I value time and money. I love to read and research. Those are my strengths. Some of my weaknesses, and even in our weaknesses, we'll see consistency. Sometimes being goal-oriented and my need to see results can make me come off as rude or rigid. People will think that I'm not as concerned about people, which is not true. I don't like to be micromanaged, so if I get into a position where somebody's looking over my shoulder all the time, that will not bring out the best in me. Again, being results-oriented, I can become frustrated if I don't see progress or get closure on a project. I also get bored if I'm working on details that seem insignificant. If I'm spending a lot of time on something that I don't think is going to move the needle, then that is a weakness of mine. I didn't go through the opportunities and threats, but in the interest of time, but in addition to listing your strengths and weaknesses, you'd also look at the opportunities and threats just in the environment around you at the time you're working on this project. My personal strategy, based on my values, my purpose, my mission, my strategy is to look for opportunities to help others help themselves. I love helping people who are trying to improve themselves. I love working with students like you. I do not enjoy trying to help people who aren't trying to help themselves. I've found that from working with different charities where people weren't doing what they could to help themselves, but they wanted the charity to bail them out. That does not bring out the best of me. So the way I'm implementing my strategy to help others help themselves is to look for opportunities to teach, to do research. I'm leveraging my background in management, in finance and accounting, in technology. You guys know from previous video that I spent a number of years working in the software industry. Also, one of the things I didn't talk about is I have a pretty extensive network of university professors and professional speakers that I'm friends with, and so I can leverage that to help implement my strategy. As far as my objectives, I look for opportunities to teach classes in my area of interest. If you remember from the introductory videos, I'm interested in organizational behavior, entitlement attitudes in business, and the morality of capitalism. I try to speak at corporate and industry events, not just at university classes. I'm looking for opportunities to research and publish in my areas of interest. I teach some classes outside of the university. This is a Dave Ramsey class called Financial Peace University, and then there's another class that was created by Del Tackett called The Truth Project. I teach those classes when I can. And then I try to develop and support programs, both charitable and for-profit, that utilize capitalism to reduce poverty. Now, again, in the interest of time, we're not going to go through every one of my action plans, but every one of my objectives has a specific action plan with specific due dates about when I want to accomplish those specific tasks. And so typically what I use to track my action plans is I use Microsoft Outlook. So I put every one of those action plans on there either as an appointment on a calendar or as a task with a due date with reminders far enough in advance that I can track my progress. I do interim check-ins. At the end of every semester, I sit down and say, how am I progressing on each of my objectives? Am I on track to hit my due dates? And if I'm getting off schedule, I adjust, right? And at the end of the year, I do a more formal overall look at my objectives and make any adjustments I need to there. So anyway, hopefully that example is helpful to you. You know, I think this process, this project that you're getting ready to work on is really important, and I believe it'll be beneficial to you. For many people, it's not only beneficial, it's actually life-changing. But like most things in life, you're going to get out of it only what you put into it. But I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. You may be in a lousy job right now. You may think you have the worst job in the world, but remember, there's always somebody worse off than you are. It could always be worse. Also remember that just because we're good at something doesn't mean that it's necessarily a strength. Many of us are good at things we don't enjoy at all. Remember, if you want to change the world, sometimes you have to start by changing that guy or girl looking back at you in the mirror in the morning. And that can be hard. But if you want to change the world, you have to start with yourself. So just in wrapping up, I want to tell you about a couple of success stories. I've told you several times that I measure my progress towards my mission by the number of people like you who I help every semester move closer to their goals. So here's some recent examples. In 2015, I had a student named Brian who was working as a salesman in an optical store. You know, he sold eyeglasses and contact lenses and that type of thing. And Brian's passion was to improve the quality of health care for people. He had an undergraduate degree in biology, I think, or something in the sciences, natural sciences. And so he went through this How Will You Measure Your Life project and really took it to heart. He used it on his career. And he was able to move to a job as a surgical technician at St. John's Hospital. He reached out to me. I helped him network with some people I knew who were officers, vice presidents in hospitals around town. Later, Brian moved into a quality improvement position at St. Francis Hospital, where his whole job was to improve the quality of health care for the patients at St. Francis Hospital. I mean, that was right in his sweet spot. And then just when he thought he couldn't get any better than that, he was offered the job of chief operating officer for a medical practice in Tennessee that offers health care to low-income people who might not otherwise be able to afford health care. I mean, he is like the poster child for how this project can change your life. And I talked to him on the phone just last month, and he talked about how much he loves what he's doing. And he was able to accomplish that, and he did all the work, but he was able to accomplish that by using this framework that we just talked about. Another example is Paul. Paul took my course in 2016. He actually had a sociology undergraduate degree, but he had decided that he wanted to be an accountant. So Paul was taking accounting courses along with his MBA coursework, but he had decided that he probably not going to qualify for a real accounting job until he finished his MBA. But I helped Paul network with some of the partners in public accounting firms and a specific accounting recruiter in our area. And Paul was offered a job as an auditor at one of the best CPA firms in Tulsa a year before he graduated with his MBA. Sean was in my class in 2016, and towards the end of that year, I was sitting eating dinner at a restaurant before the December graduation. And I ran into Sean, and he said, Dr. Joplin, that How Will You Measure Your Life project changed my life. It changed my life. And it just reminded me how important this project can be. In the next week or so, you're assigned to watch a video of my interview with an OSU alumni named Richard Moore. As you'll find out, Richard went on a study abroad trip to Sierra Leone. And he was so moved by the tragedy of the orphans there that he moved, immediately after he graduated, he moved to Africa and started a company to employ orphans who had become orphaned during the Blood Diamond Wars in Sierra Leone. That's a guy who gets it, who understands his purpose, who understands his mission in life, and is literally changing the world. I don't know what your dream is, but you can be the next person whose life is changed by this project. Or you can just go through the motions and turn in the bare minimum to get a grade for the class. The choice is up to you, but I want you to encourage you to make the most of this opportunity. One last story here. Bob Goff, who you see here at the bottom of this slide, is an author and he's an attorney. and he teaches business law at a university in California. He extends a similar challenge to his students as I do with this project. A few years ago, Bob was talking to one of his students, a guy named John, and Bob and John decided that they were going to try to change the world by going to Uganda. And Bob went to Uganda, and at that time in Uganda, if a dad didn't like a particular young man who was interested in his daughter, he could just accuse that young man of improprieties, and the boy would be arrested and could rot in jail with no right to due process. But Bob was able to get something like 99% of these accused young men released because there was no proof that they were guilty. They were basically innocent. So Bob Goff had this student John in his class, and they decided they're going to start a school for young people in Uganda. Bob told John, just pick someplace, right? And they decided on Uganda in Africa. And they started this little school over there. And after a while, John was over there running the school, and he asked Bob, he said, hey man, I really want to add 2 bunks. I have a couple of students who are walking about 10 kilometers each day to and from school. 10 kilometers, that's over just a little over 6 miles. And Bob was against it. He's like, no, we're not putting in bunk beds. You know, a few years ago, Oprah started a boarding school, and it got kind of crossways, and there were problems and bad press. We're not starting a boarding school. We're not putting in bunk beds. But John wouldn't give up because he was so passionate about his mission of helping these kids in Uganda. And so today I can tell you that their school, the Restore Leadership Academy, has about 250 students over there in Uganda, and they have 250 bunk beds. 250 bunk beds because of John's passion for his mission. So let me ask you something. What are you passionate about? What is it that fires you up, that gets you excited? What are you passionate about? And what are you going to do about it? I want you to think about someone who you admire or someone who you envy. Think about that person. Picture them in your mind. Who's that person that you're like, man, if I could only be like that person? Dr. Phil McGraw said that the difference between you and the person you envy is that you settled. You settled for less. And I like what Megan Kelly said about that. She was aware of Phil McGraw's quote, and she said that she at some point in her life decided she was going to settle for more. She was going to expect more of herself. You know, in the movie Dead Poet Society, the character John Keating said, seize the days, boys. Make your lives extraordinary. And so that's my challenge to you, to use this process to make your life extraordinary. In the movie Braveheart, William Wallace says, every man dies, but not every man truly lives. How great is that? Let me ask you that. Remember at the very beginning of the videos for this project, I asked you to think about, what are they going to say at your funeral? What are people going to say when you pass away? How are you going to contribute to the world and make it a better place? Mark Twain said that the 2 most important days in your life are the day that you're born and the day you find out why. If you don't already know why you were born, I hope this project helps you figure it out. I think it's a really cool project. I hope as you go through it, you begin to see the value in it, and you actually get excited about doing it. And it becomes more than a class assignment for you, that it becomes something that you use as a tool, as a template for the rest of your lives to help you accomplish your mission, to accomplish your goals in life. And I'd love to be a part of that. I'd love to help you network, help you think about that, help you reach your goals. Because that's the reason I do what I do. That's the reason I came back to school late in life to invest in the next generation of teachers and leaders. And so good luck on the project, on the assignment. I can't wait to read your templates, your strategies for your life. And I will see you next time. Thanks.